We'll talk about our next subject. You know, last time we were talking about pheromones and boar odor. And I think Kyle had the good question about, does that can of that boar spray compare to a real boar? And it doesn't even come close. Because here's another reason I didn't say. Sure, they've isolated the, let's say, a steroid. That's the boar smell. So the can is like, you know, pretty blasé. You spray it supposedly around the mouth or the nose of the pig. And if she's an estrus, she'll stand immobile. If you're familiar with pigs and know pig behavior, a sow or gilt in heat has like an immobile response. You can press on their back. If you're a little kid, you can get on the pig and it won't move. Compare that to a boar. Okay, he's got the same chemical, but probably others. A lot more of it. But then two other things the boar has. Sound. If you've ever been around a boar that's mating and, you know, chomping at the bit. And then the sight of the boar to the female. So there's sight and sound added by the boar, but the can doesn't even come close, right? So the can is a poor substitute. I could see, you know, if you're desperate, you can use it, but otherwise, nothing better than the old crusty boar. And I say crusty because that smegma smells. If you've ever worked with boars, you have it on your hands all day long, right? Because, I mean, they just are full of all kinds of scents. Okay, now did we check the floors, guys, for dog, especially we got that puppy running around, see if there's any old pills, or yeah, give me that, whatever that is. A little something. Yeah, a little, it's just a little stone. So yeah, pick things up off the floor. Okay, so now we're going to go to cohorts. And a cohort is members of your same species that are like you. Like, you guys are cohorts of each other. Kind of similar age, similar experience. I'm not really your cohort, right? I'm just a few years older than you, but old enough past that I'm not really your cohort. So, I mean, we can still be friends, but, you know, your cohorts are who you're sitting next to. And lo and behold, when you're in a litter-bearing animal, who you develop next to in the uterus can affect you. So this would be called prenatal effects. Because then there's also postnatal effects. I mean, it's amazing how this works. And so let's break down the prenatal effects. It depends on who's beside you, if you're a little litter-bearing animal, and it depends on who your mom is. There are what's called prenatal maternal effects. Okay? So there's a lot of things going on besides your genotype, right? And so everybody knows that formula P equals G times E or plus E, whatever you want to call it. Phenotype equals genotype plus the environment or times the environment. That's why cloned animals are never exactly like wherever the cells came from, because Barbara Streisand, I don't know if you saw that in the newspaper, cloned her dog. Actually, she had made 2 clones. They're going to maybe look somewhat similar, but you know, they had different prenatal maternal environments. I think she cloned the dog at 2 different times, so the recipient would have been 2 different females. Okay, so they're never going to be the same. They're going to be similar, and I think it's, you know, at first I thought, oh yeah, cloning. Oh, my favorite dog, I'd love to clone, but you know what? I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it makes any sense. Especially at the time, a few years ago, it was $100,000 per animal. There's like people that need food that you could give that $100,000 to, you know what I mean? Anyway, when you're in the uterus, I'm going to click on these, and there's some, I know there's a diagram on one. There's a lot of neat little articles. It's called Intrauterine Position Effects. And that Vandenberg guy there that's listed, he is probably as good as they get as far as studying these effects. And so there's all kinds of endpoints you look at. You know, sometimes it's the transfer of testosterone from the male to the other fetuses. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit. Once the zygote is present, every zygote heads down the road to be a female. It's like blinders. I'm going to be a female. No matter what your genotype is, everybody starts out to be the female. And only if you get some influence to divert to the male track, you develop into a male. But then look there's the straight path to the female, there's the male, but there's a distance in between. You know, if you don't make it all the way this way, then you're not maybe the full-fledged male. Okay. Anyway, so one big thought is there's testosterone that transfers from I'm going to watch my camera here for the racing dogs. Okay, very good. Oh, yeah. That's funny. That's normal behavior. So testosterone goes from the male because the testes are making testosterone. The ovaries don't make anything. Okay? So if you took out the testes from a male fetus, it would tend to develop into a female. Okay? So it's this diffusion of testosterone from a male fetus into nearby fetuses. And there's a nice little designation to that, because if you're in the length of the uterus, like let's say a pig, you have two neighbors. Okay? So you have a neighbor on your left and a neighbor on your right, unless you're at the end of the uterus. Okay? So then there's a designation, there's a way to code this. So when you're surrounded by, if you're a female and you're surrounded by two males, then I'll show you this code in a little bit. But there's all kinds of effects. It's not the easiest thing to study. Going to this one there. And there's Vandenberg again. This is a great article because it's like a summary. So look at on this table of contents there. They've got things in swine, humans, mice, okay, hormonal transport between fetuses, okay, and here's what I wanted to point out. So like, let's say, okay, this is probably a mouse. Do you notice, can you tell that the mouse would not have any intrauterine transfer? I should say transuterine migration. That's what I want to say. Mice do not have any transuterine migration. That's the right word. That means a fetus on the left can't go to the right. You see that anatomically? Swine do. Swine have transuterine migration. And I believe, well, the mouse definitely doesn't. And I think the rat is just like this too. You can't go from the left to the right because there's really two independent cervixes that go to the vagina. So there would be no embryo that would go to the vagina and then get to the other side, as this depicted here. But then, this nice little chart, let's see, there's 6 fetuses on the left and 6 on the right, and that hardly ever would happen, right? They're not going to have like 6 ovulations from the left, 6 from the right. I mean, it could happen, but there's always going to be some lopsidedness, probably. So then look at this female right here. Well, I guess we'll point this one up. And I guess that's a male right there. So see where I'm at? So what you would say with that is a 2 female male. That's what that animal is right there. 2 females, and he was a male, okay? So now I'm looking for here's a female here, and she's a 2 male female. So actually I'd like to see him go 2M and then female. Do you see how she's a 2 male female? There's a male, and she's a female. Okay? So, and of course you guys have all these clicks, so you can look at this. But that female is a 2 male female. If one was a female, then it'd be a 1 male female. Okay? And if you're two male, female, you'll get more testosterone than a one male, female, and definitely more testosterone than a zero female, male, right? Zero male, female. Okay, you can look at that. Anyway, that's how they designate this. What they do in swine is they butcher the sow near the time of birth. Then you take the uterus out, and the pigs are still alive, of course, that's the whole end point here. And then when you pick them out, you can tell exactly who's your neighbor, right? Somebody can record. So you butcher the sow very close to the end of gestation, and then take out the fetuses, and then raise the fetuses, right? And you can know, well, that was a two male, female, whatever, right? That's how you do that. Sometimes you can put dye. It gets complicated, but there's things, you can read it and what they do. Anyway, okay. So then, now let's see. Okay, so I'm just showing you these things. Okay, maybe the number of teats can be, in the females, can be altered by your cohorts. And, okay. So now here's a chart that has some effects. That's what I wanted to get to. So here they're comparing a zero male female. So a zero male female would be surrounded by females, right? See, another way of saying that is a two female female. See that? But if you're going to concentrate on the male, then it's better to go zero male female. And then they compared it to a two male female, which means you're surrounded on both sides by males. So then, higher fetal testosterone levels in the female. So they're proving that testosterone is coming from the males. Then, you've got a later vaginal opening. And in rodents, the vaginal opening does not open until puberty. So I remember when I was at Nebraska, at one time I had 120 females I was mating with males. And so when they all pupped out, I had over 1,000 pups. I had to sex them at the time of birth and actually mark them so we could remember who they were. Anyway, so that would be, if you see later vaginal opening, that means later puberty. Okay? More male offspring, that's interesting. And a lot of times in animal production, you don't want more male offspring. It's nice to have more female offspring for replacements, right? They mate and impregnated later, tend to be more sensitive to testosterone, interesting. And then the longer anal genital distance, and I want to concentrate on that. You should know what an anal, A-N-O, you can see it up there, anal genital distance. That's how you sex rodents, mice and rats. You can take a newborn rat, pup, and you can say, this is a female or this is a male. Because sometimes that's neat in experiments if you want to, maybe raise the animals differently, or what we did in Nebraska, we cross-foster pups. That means at the day of birth, we took some of the pups from this mom and put them on a different mom, because then those pups had the same prenatal maternal environment, but they had different postnatal maternal environments if you farm them out, cross-foster them. I'm going to set my camera back here a second. So, I'm going to teach you how to sex rodents right now. That's what I was searching, and these girls up here were laughing at me when some of those figures came up. Okay, so then more likely to mount other females. And this depends on species. Cattle are famous for that, right? You can have a herd of cows, and they will be mounting everybody if they're in estrus. It happens a little bit in swine. Anybody ever seen that in sheep? I'm not sure if I've ever seen it in sheep. I've worked with a lot of sheep, but so that's why you should know the behavior, the normal behaviors of the animals you work with. And look at this, more aggressive. Yeah, testosterone equals aggression. Just read the newspaper. Who's doing all this violent stuff? Mostly males, right? Blame it on testosterone. And then what's funny is this morning on the drive-in, on the radio, they were talking about, oh, if you have low T, you've heard those things, right? Low T, here's a supplement for low, you guys have heard those? Sure, back me up on that, right? Low testosterone. Yeah, anyway. So, let's do the anal genital distance. And this is dangerous, because I thought, so I made sure I'd go pig, anal genital distance. I didn't want to find nasty stuff. Maybe there is the nasty stuff down below, who knows. Anyway, the anal genital distance is the distance from the anal opening to the genitalia. Okay? And here's the kicker. It's longer in males. So males have a longer anal genital distance. Females have a shorter distance. And it's kind of relative. So like when I'm sexing a litter of rats, it's bad just to have one. Because it's kind of relative. So I look at all the litter. I know if I have 12 pups, there's got to be some females, some males. So I look for the ones that have the shortest distance, and that would be the females. And so everybody that's about that same, I could put off to the side as being female, then the other ones are male. Okay, so it's this distance. You can't really measure it. It's better to compare in a litter. So, here's an example. This is obviously a female. So there's the anus, there's the vulva. So that has, and I guess they're doing it in guinea pigs. So that would be a shorter anal genital distance. Let's see, this looks like, oh, and then good, they have this word, vaginal plug, which I'll talk about. Okay, so this might be 2 females. Okay, so this is like a little sidebar. This is how I determined if my female was bred that night. Remember, I had 120. Every morning I'd come in and look for the vaginal plug. And the vaginal plug is left by the male after mating. It's part of the ejaculate. So I had a little dental device that I would, and actually what I would do is, if I saw the vaginal plug, then I didn't even actually have to swab the vagina. But if I didn't see a plug, that doesn't mean they weren't mated. So then I had like a 1x3 glass slide, and I'd take a little dental device, put it in the vagina, and put it on the slide, and I would look for the presence of sperm under the microscope. So vaginal plug, if you see it, that means mating. But if you don't see it, it doesn't mean no mating. You know what I mean? Because it might have fallen out. So if I saw it, then I didn't have to swab that female. But if I didn't see it, I had to swab to see if the sperm were there or not. And of course, everybody, you guys know what rat sperm looks like? It's incredibly distinctive. It's like, it looks like a fish hook. And I'll show that to you in a minute. Anyway, those look like 2 females, so I was hoping maybe, and here's, I guess this is maybe the best comparison. There, you can see there's the penis there. Oh, and that's the other thing. And then that's anus. So males longer. So I told you, and here's how you can tell puberty. Remember, in female rodents, the vaginal opening appears. That's puberty. In the male, the penis cannot be extended until puberty, out of that sheath, that orifice. So if you get full extension of a penis, that means the animal has reached puberty. Okay? So now you know how to do puberty in rodents, you know how to do sexing, and then the last thing I want to show you is a rat sperm, because once you've seen this, now look how dangerous this is. I'm going to Google rat sperm. This is why I can't teach grade school. Everybody's like holding their breath. There we go. Look at that. Once you see that under the microscope, I mean, there's no doubt about rat sperm, like a hook. And if you're really good, sometime we should try this. No matter where the sperm comes from, no matter what domestic animal, you should be able to look at it in a microscope and tell me exactly what animal it came from. They're all very distinct. Bull, boar, ram, buck, yeah. Okay, so now we're going back here. There's some, there's some studies. Oh yeah, and then the biggest effect. Sorry, let's get rid of those things. Freemartinism. This is the best example of something that happens because of your neighbor, your intrauterine neighbor. And it's called Freemartinism. It's up there on the top if you're going to spell that. Right there. And this is a case where there's twin fetuses in utero in cattle of different sexes. One male, one female. It doesn't happen with two males. It doesn't happen with two females. It's got to be one male, one female. And there's other compounds that leak across, but it's probably, a lot of it is the testosterone that goes from the male to the female. Because remember, the female is going to go straight down this path, but the testes of the male makes that little bull fetus go to the male side. But if you get some testosterone and other chemicals leaking to the female, then her track is going to get altered somehow. Okay? And it's not like all the way there. It can be different degrees to that point. So, a Freemartin heifer is sterile, basically. Its reproductive tract is wrecked. And some people say 90, I always say 95% of the time, the female will be a Freemartin. That means 5% of the time, it will be a normal heifer, and you wouldn't call it a Freemartin. It's got to be messed up to be called a Freemartin. Okay? So 95% of the time, it's messed up. 5% not. A lot of people assume it's messed up, and they raise that heifer as a beef animal, or cull it, or sell it, or something. You don't keep it for a replacement. But there's nothing genetically bad with the mom, right? It's just chance that one of the fetuses is a male and one is the male. One is a female, one is a male. So that's Freemartinism. Okay. And we're down to twins. And I just want to bring up the point. Twins are good in goats and sheep. In fact, you want to. You want to have at least two. 3 is okay, 4 is too many, 2 is good, 1 is not enough. In pigs, of course, they're litter bearing. You want plenty of fetuses. Cows, it's kind of debatable. You'll find people that say, yes, they should have twins, because then I get 2 offspring. Others will say, no, just give me 1 good calf. It'll be bigger than if there were 2. Okay? So it's kind of controversial. When I was at Nebraska, they were selecting cows in one of the studies for twinning. Thinking that, the more people in the world, the more animals you can, get raised from one dam, the better. It's debatable. Horses, no, no, no. In fact, they'll go in, if there's twin fetuses, they'll go in and manually crush one of the embryos. Have you seen twin horses born? Yes, it happens. But most of the time you don't know they're too developed unless you do a lot of, reproductive work. But you don't want twins in horses. The uterus says, I only want 1. It'll happen, but most people don't want twins in horses. So that's very interesting. So cows are kind of iffy. It's not maybe a big deal, but the fetuses will be smaller. When it's born than if it's a single. There's no doubt about that. So it just depends. Some people just want 1 good calf. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right there because the next subject I don't want to get to until after spring break, environmental hormones. So you can play with the puppies. We have the room for an hour. I don't know when Adrian's going. You can leave